stream brought to you by Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark and People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first. I have University of Illinois horticulture educator Andrew Halstiger in studio. Great to have you back here, Andrew.
Hey, good morning.
So the leaves are changing. Fall is officially here, and that does not stop all the horticulture and gardening that you can still do and really to prepare yourself for next season as well. So, I mean, by the way, real quick, before we get into all of that business, do you know what makes the leaves change, Andrew? I've always kind of wondered that.
Well, the green pigment that you see usually, that's the presence of chlorophyll. So we have photosynthesis going on. Well, those vibrant colors that you see, those are other pigments that are there and present in the leaves during the year, but you don't see them because you have so much of the chlorophyll being present. So with the absence of the chlorophyll, those vibrant colors come through, and we haven't quite yet made the peak of our fall color. It should be coming here at the end of October. So the colors are still changing. Some trees are pretty vibrant. The ginkgo tree, it's interesting in that, it has the yellow fall color, but all the leaves will fall in a day. So that's a nice one to have around if you're wanting some easy fall cleanup. Other trees, they kind of, lose a few leaves here and there. And some of those leaves can be quite large, like a sycamore tree. So it's good to think about your plant selection whenever it comes to the fall and how much cleanup you're going to have. Often people are calling about the sweet gum tree, and I have all these gumballs in my yard. What do I do? And it's sometimes they've had treatments that you can treat the trees and prevent those gumballs from forming, but they also have cultivars that have been developed that do not produce the gumballs. So there are continuing cultivars that are bred into the possibilities that you have out there.
The way I understand the chlorophyll, it relates to photosynthesis, right?
That's correct.
There's just less photosynthesis occurring this time of year, and that's meaning there's less chlorophyll in those leaves, and then the leaves change. Do I have that right?
It's pretty close, yeah.
Okay. For layman's terms, it works out pretty well. And so really, and then at the end of October, when you say that they're going to reach their peak coloring season, they're going to start to fall a lot more. And then that's going to lead a lot of folks to wonder what to do with all those leaves too. You have a lot of options right now.
There are quite a few options when it comes to leaves. So if you still have the mower going and you haven't winterized it yet, you can mulch over those leaves and, make good use of that organic material right back into the lawn. If you choose to leave the leaves, the lawn is not the place to leave the leaves because they can accumulate, and then the grass is still photosynthesizing. So you need to get the leaves off of the lawn in order for the lawn to photosynthesize and not to die out. So you can remove those leaves and put them in a compost pile. But to be efficient with your compost pile, you'll not only need those brown materials, but you'll also need some of the green materials to get your carbon-nitrogen balance. And you'll have to stir that compost pile occasionally to make sure that it gets enough oxygen and aeration into the pile to keep the microbes working. But it is a good time at the end of the season to be composting materials and making that compost a usable product for next year. So if you're not going to compost, you can even incorporate some of those organic materials like your leaves. Tilling them into the garden is another possibility to where you can till it under and then have it there breaking down over the course of the winter.
And then once those leaves fall, I understand then it's a pretty good time to think about pruning too.
That's not
necessarily true.
When we get to the fall, it is the time that the leaves fall, but we need to wait until late winter, early spring before we do our pruning, because if you prune in the fall, you can stimulate the growth of the tree. And then, as we've noticed, we've had some cold temperatures, frost and freezes, and that newly produced growth would be killed by those inclement weather. So you want to wait on your pruning, but it is the apt time for the late winter, early spring to be pruning your oak trees, because some diseases are spread by insects. And luckily for us, most of our insects go away during this winter season. They're trying to find a place of refuge, underneath some bark, in different places in the landscape. So you can just be cautious of when you're pruning, and be mindful. Trees do need some protection for the winter. So some are thin-skinned bark. Those can have sun scald. So providing some protection for those with a tree wrap could be beneficial.
In other words, it depends on the tree, but most of the time you want to wait a while to prune that tree.
That's true.
Okay. Well, I didn't realize that. That's very good. I'm learning something new every time that you come in here, Andrew. And then you also mentioned winterizing your lawnmower. How do I winterize a lawnmower?
Well, one of the first things you could think about is the sharpness of the blades and your other tools. Spring is usually a big rush to get into the landscape and to be there whenever the weather accommodates. So when you have downtime, you can sharpen the blades of your mower, your pruners, your hand tools, and you can also put some additive into the fuel if you have a gas powered mower, weed eaters, things of that nature, so that way that there's no damage whenever the freezing temperatures and that gas is sitting there over the winter.
And I know that with the trees changing and all that, the master gardeners are also holding a garden walk this weekend. Still time to RSVP. Doesn't cost anything. They just need to know how much cider and cookies to prepare, the way I understand. That's coming up this weekend, right?
Yep, it's this Saturday from 2 to 4 at the Linda Cahias Arboretum. And so look on our website for registration, extension.illinois.edu/CJMM. That we have an events tab, and you can see all the events that are currently going on here locally.
Have you seen that Arboretum before, Andrew?
I have. I've been there on a few occasions.
What'd you think of it?
It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Got a lot of nice selection of trees and shrubs, and even perennials, and they keep the landscape manicured, and lots to see.
And I know you have another event coming up here this later today, actually. Go ahead and plug it if you would.
Well, I'm going to be talking about native alternatives to invasive plants. And so there'll also be another opportunity in the future for this program. So check out the website, but covering those alternatives that you can use for invasive plants. Our invasive plants are a major competitor of native plants. And, with all their negative attributes, you want to find plants that can fill that space. And we have some that, weren't first thought of as invasive, but they didn't stand the test of time, and they've been noted as being invasive now. And so we look for replacements in the landscape. You might have a burning bush that you planted, but those can escape into forested areas, and it may be time to rethink that in what you're planting.
It's University of Illinois horticulture educator Andrew Hulsinger here on the WTIM Morning Show. More from him after this short time out here on WTIM, your information station.
WTIM. Let's check the markets now on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Jim Taylor. Corn, beans, and wheat all trading higher at this hour. December corn, 681 and a quarter, up 3. March corn up 3.5, 688. May corn, 688 and a quarter, up 3 and a quarter. November beans up 19 and a quarter, 13.91 and 3/4. January beans up 18, $14 3/4. March beans 14.09 and a half, up 17 and 3/4. December wheat 842 and a half, up 1 and a quarter. March wheat up 1 3/4, 861 and a quarter. December bean meal 409.20, that's up 7.50. December bean oil 71.48, up 84 cents. In the livestock market, October feeders 175.57, up 35 cents. October live cattle up 17 cents, 149.52. December lean hogs 86.65, down 72 cents. And in the energy market at this hour, November crude oil 88.01, up 246. Jim Taylor, RFD Radio Network.
This is a station editorial. I'm Randall J. Miller, station president. What's old is new again. That's the subject of an article on TheRinger.com headlined, Is Old Music Killing New Music? The subheadline says that the power of nostalgia in pop culture is bringing old music back again. The article by Ted Gioia goes on to say that the song of the summer was Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill from 1985, launched by the most watched global TV show of the summer, Stranger Things, which pays homage to the 1980s. And the writer says that the biggest movie hit of the summer, Top Gun Maverick, is a sequel to the 1986 film. That was 36 years ago. He adds that the 5 biggest movies of the year were all sequels as well. The writer of the Ringer.com article says consumption of new music is down, while the growth is in what's called catalog music or older songs. He adds Wall Street is paying attention. Investment groups are buying rights to old music catalogs dating back to the 70s or even further back than that. Why? Because that's what people are buying and listening to. The writer points out it's the first time in 1,000 years that people are investing in old songs, saying that consumption of older music went from 67 to 73% from last year to this. Well, as the old saying goes, the times they are a-changin'. The global population is waxing nostalgic for memories of simpler times when people actually got along. I suspect Frank Sinatra, Roy Orbison, Marvin Gaye, John Lennon, George Harrison, Andy Gibb, Tom Petty, and thousands more singers that are in rock and roll heaven are having a celebration concert in heaven over the fact that their music is new again. Makes me feel good to play these and many other artists from the last over 40 years on our Miller Media Group music stations. Because right now, in the times we're living in, what's old is new again, and that's a good thing. That's our opinion. We welcome yours. Our email address is editorial@randyradio.com.
Your information station, WTIM.
Welcome back to the WTIM Morning Show. I'm Avery Cooper. Your stream brought to you by Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark and people's bank and trust. They put people first. I have University of Illinois Extension horticulture educator Andrew Halsinger in studio, and we're talking all about preparing your garden, cleaning it up, and getting it ready for the winter and the next growing season. And Andrew, I know one of the things that you're focused on right now, cleaning up and maintaining that perennial garden and how to do it properly too.
Well, there used to be the mindset of cleaning up everything down to the ground and, clean it up where it's not a issue. You'll be ahead of the game in the springtime. But what people forgot about are the pollinators and the native habitat that they have in their own backyard for these creatures that need a place to make their habitat and to overwinter. And so leaving some of that perennials, some of the stems, those can be a habitat for those native pollinators. So you don't need to absolutely clean it up to the best that you can do, but you can make it, somewhat manicured for, the style of the garden that you have. But you also think about, clean up to provide that habitat. It will be beneficial.
Yeah.
The one thing you don't want to do is if you had items that were diseased, well, those can harbor diseases for the next year. So if you had fungal issues with your trees or shrubs, clean up that leaf litter, get rid of that. You might have forgot about the bagworms that you might have saw and didn't get treated. So removing those bags over the winter, looking for insects to try and make their way into your home. That's something that's going to happen because we're having colder temperatures. So hopefully you disconnected that hose from the faucet and are getting things prepared for the winter season as it has arrived here with cold temperatures.
That's a good reminder. I think I'm going to go do that right after we're done talking here, especially the hose.
Because if you don't disconnect the hose and you don't have a frost-proof or that kind of spigot, then it can do damage to that spigot, and then you'll have to be addressing those plumbing issues. And so I'd rather not address the plumbing issues. I'd rather just disconnect the hose and get prepared for winter.
Indeed. Any other winter preparation tips that you want to provide here before we kind of wrap this up?
I think just thinking about your trees and shrubs before we go into winter, there has been across the state times of drought and dry weather. And so usually your trees and shrub are going to need an inch of water a week. Well, we haven't been seeing those kind of rainfalls. So before the ground freezes, you need to do some watering so that way those trees have a reservoir of water and they have kind of primed into winter before it gets that ground frozen and they're unable to take up that water. That's especially true for evergreens. Your needled evergreens and your broadleafed evergreens, they still transpire in the wintertime. They're still losing that water through those leaves. So important to note that, and be careful also with those salts that you may be applying to sidewalks. If we have, snow or ice and you're wanting to thaw out that sidewalk, there are salts that are more tolerant to the plants. So be looking at those labels, see what chemicals you may be applying, and if your plants are susceptible to those, that may be lead you to maybe a redesign of where you have some plants. Boxwoods are typically really not that salt tolerant, and so people usually hammer their boxwoods with some salt, and if they were placed a little bit further away from the sidewalk, it may be a better scenario.
And then shifting off to, you have that program today, what to do with some alternatives rather for invasive species too. That's coming up today at noon. And then that'll be available online next week too.
Yep.
All right. And go to the website, right?
Yep. Go to the website and check out all the events that we have. And there's plenty of information to obtain there as well.
Horticulture educator Andrew Hulsinger. Thank you so much, Andrew.
All right. Thanks.
The Big 870 WTIM Assumption Taylorville, 96.1 W241 CF.